How did you lose your virginity? I was 14. Legal age in my country, because my partner was 14 too. Happened to be left alone for a few hours and we were horny teens, so we did it on his couch. I don't regret it, but it was pretty underwhelming. Never did it with a guy again. 26 extremely intense seconds. Missionary. I finished sweating over her, panting. Asked her, "Did you come too?" Like a fucking idiot. Doggy style with chitty chitty bang bang on in the background. It was as awkward as it sounds. Lost it with my second girlfriend. I was her first boyfriend, so she made me wait almost 2 years. She was going to move away to the United States cause of the aftermath of a hurricane, so we decided to do it in case the long distance was too much. Both of us were virgins. Lunch break at high school. His house was like a 2-minute walk from the gates. We snuck out. He stopped halfway through to look out the window and make sure his mother hadn't come home from work because he thought he heard a car pull into the driveway. Single bed, in a room he shared with 2 brothers. Strangely somehow still wasn't terrible. Young love. In a public bathroom with my girl best friend. It was nice. Really classy. On a Tinder date. I told the girl that I was not a virgin. In hindsight, she most definitely should have realized I was lying. I was 19. Some girl invited me to her party and I didn't even talk to her the whole night. When everyone started leaving, she looked at me and said, "Not you."
What's the best roast you heard someone say in school? There was a special needs kid in my class, no clue what he had exactly, but guessing some autism. My class was small and no one bothered him. Kind of a dick move to bully a challenged kid, that is, except for one girl in my class. She thought she was hot shit, and granted she was pretty and came from money. She had a known habit of inviting less attractive classmates to take pictures with her so she could look more attractive in social media posts, and yes, she directly said this to several people. Anyhow, she bragged about how she was going to ask the special kid to prom as a joke/make herself look like a nice person, and everyone thought it was really bitchy, but no one really did anything about it. When she asked the kid in a public scene, this kid turned and flatly said, "No, thank you, you're a slut." I'm not a big fan of saying stuff like that, but it was hilarious, and for once in her life she seemed mortified.
What's the worst scandal to happen at your school? The math teacher left his wife of 18 years for one of the graduating seniors. My English teacher in the 11th grade was sleeping with the whole girls' basketball team in exchange for straight A's. I actually failed English that year, but when that made the news, my school said I didn't have to go anymore because he wasn't doing the grading properly. Everyone who had his class got a B. Girl A decided to fight Girl B in class. Girl A ripped Girl B's real hair out, broke her nose, and crippled her. Girl B was sent to the emergency room. Girl A was suspended for 2 weeks. They were both in 7th grade. 1 year in exams days they were trying to add a new method to prevent cheating where a man from the administration comes to every class before every exam and collects students' phones while sticking a sticker with a number on each phone and giving the same sticker to the student so he can get his phone after school without anyone taking someone else's phone that looks alike or something. This was working at first and a bit preventing cheating until one day some guy sneaked into our high school and came as the man who collects the phones while he wasn't. He stole the whole high school phones and went lol. A student that was in the grade above me killed his girlfriend and buried her by the train tracks right behind the school. People who came close to dying. What were your last thoughts? I was stabbed in the neck by someone robbing my house. I totally thought I was going to die. I hate myself, but I begged the guy who stabbed me to stay because I didn't want to die alone. He said sorry and walked away. That effing broke my heart. Thankfully he called 911 for me. I was in a fight and I didn't know I was stabbed in the liver and the lung. I walked away with my friend and collapsed in an alley. I remember bleeding out with calming waves of euphoria washing over me, and I thought, I've lived enough. I'm okay with this. I blacked out and woke up in the back of an ambulance with waves of immense pain assaulting my body. Dying isn't awful. Surviving is awful. I thought I was having a DRG overdose. I just remember thinking how disappointed my mom was going to be with me. Was run over by a bus last year. My thought when I went under the tires was, but it's a Wednesday. I pictured my husband coming home to an empty house and I desperately hoped people would reach out and make sure he was okay. Couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. People with street smarts. What is your most street tip? Trust your gut. You see people acting normally your whole life. You know what it looks like. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, there's a reason, even if you don't know what it is yet. Never talk money on public transportation, and never count money in a parking lot. Look both ways crossing a one-way street. There may always be one idiot. Act like you're in a hurry unless people will want to bother you. If you're in an argument with somebody and they get in your face and then look away, there's a good chance they're about to try and knock your head off. You don't owe anybody anything, including conversation. People who want to take advantage of you will usually start by initiating unsolicited conversation.
Dear security guards of Reddit, what was the most fucked up thing you've ever saw on your shift? I've worked security for the past 30 years, from working on the doors for clubs to hotel security, but nothing quite stuck with me like this did. It was my second security job. I was working at a big hotel in London. I had the graveyard shift, so it was usually super calm. Most shifts I was paid to watch movies and scroll through my phone. This one night, however, was very different. About an hour into my shift, I got a call from reception to say there was an extremely distressed man telling them he was about to be killed and a gang was after him. He spoke very limited English, so reception was struggling to fully understand the issue. I checked the cameras and could see the man reaching over the desk trying to grab for the phone, so I rushed down from my office. When I got down, I took the man into a side room and tried to get him to explain the situation. He begged me to call the police, saying a gang had been following him and they were going to chop him into pieces and kill him. He was extremely scared. I left him in the room and phoned the police. They arrived and talked to the man, and supposedly sorted out the issue. They checked him into a room at the hotel and said they would be back in the morning to interview and discover what has happened. I took the man up to his room and left him there. The man stayed in his room all night and no one bothered him. It was about 30 minutes before my shift finished, so I thought I would go knock on his room to make sure he was okay before I left. I got to his room and knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again hard and shouted security. No answer. I was worried for his safety, so unlocked the door and shouted in. Still no answer. I entered the room. It was completely empty. Then suddenly I get a call from reception. The girl was crying her eyes out, shouting for me to get down immediately.
Who in history is looked up to as a hero but is actually a terrible person? Apparently Dr. Seuss cheated on his wife so much it drove her to suicide. Michael Jordan was known for being a huge asshole to people, mainly waitstaff and casino workers. Though, he is revered as an icon. Gandhi, racist towards Africans, extremist in his peace ideology, said Jews should have just surrendered themselves, and a little odd, proclaimed himself celibate, and would sleep with young women who often revered him in his bed to test his resolve. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, but wanted to stop the contamination of deaf people in society. He attempted to stop intermarriage between deaf and hearing people, and advocated for the ban of sign language. He also was a fan of eugenics to eliminate deaf people. Henry Ford is an unabashed racist and the man the actual Nazis looked up to as an inspiration. Mother Teresa. It's very controversial for the Catholic Church since a lot of people venerate her. But people are starting to recognize her misdeeds. Hitler, a revered painter, actually led the Nazis in World War II and killed millions of Jews. What's a life-saving tip everyone should know? In a nuclear explosion, most of the damage and death is caused by the shockwave the blast creates, not the fireball, which has a comparatively small radius. One day you may find yourself outside or looking out a window to see an extremely bright flash. As bright as if you were staring straight at the sun. Do not attempt to locate the source of the flash. You have maybe 8 to 10 seconds to respond if you're far enough away from the fireball. Lay face down on the ground and put your thumbs in your ears and fingers over your eyes. Breathe through your teeth. Since you're laying face down, the shockwave will mostly pass over you. If you're standing up, it can cause your lungs, eardrums, and other organs to explode. Once the shockwave passes over you, you need to find shelter immediately. I said before that most death from the explosion is caused by the shockwave. Well, far more death is subsequently caused by nuclear fallout after the blast. Do not attempt to travel anywhere. Just get underground. If you're next to a complete stranger's house or a business, don't hesitate to go inside and hide out under as much concrete and steel as possible. You need to remain in this location for the next 48 hours. This is critical. Even if you survive the blast, if you attempt to go home and spend just 20 minutes outside traveling, you will more than likely die of radiation sickness. Radioactive material after a blast decays exponentially, and you will be safe to try and find your loved ones after 48 hours. If you don't wait this out, you definitely won't be alive to find them. When you're ready, you need to leave the city and get as far from the fallout as you can. Teachers of Reddit, what's the saddest thing you've ever found out about a student? That the reason that my grade 12 student was falling asleep during math class was because he was working 40 hours a week to pay his parents' bills. I saw his pay stub. He was a great kid too. When I taught second grade, I had a student who walked kinda funny. It took me about a week to realize that it was because his shoes were too small. I got him some new shoes at Kmart because kids' shoes are cheap. I told him it was so he would be able to run really fast in gym class. I found out he was living with his grandma because his dad was in prison for killing his mom. I started buying him clothes after that. At the end of the school year, I was packing up some boxes and one of them said snacks. The boy looked at me with great big eyes and asked if I really had snakes in the box. I cried over the fact that I promoted a kid to 3rd grade who really couldn't read. I had a very smart kid failing my class because he wasn't turning in any homework. When I asked him why, he told me he lived in a hotel room with 12 other people. There wasn't space, and it was too loud for him to focus.
What is the laziest thing you've ever done? Used to have one of those, clap on, clap off lights in my room. I hated clapping, so I just made an audio recording of me clapping and mapped it to one of the programmable keys on my keyboard. I always heat things in the microwave for 111 or 222 because I'm too lazy to move my fingers to the 0 before I hit start. I was laying in bed with the light on and wanted to go to sleep with it off. I called my house from my cell phone and asked for myself in a disguised voice. When my mom came in to bring me the phone, I asked her to turn the light out when she left. Hung up both phones and went to sleep. I was once on a US military ship, having breakfast in the wardroom, officer's lounge, when the operations officer walks in. This guy was the definition of not a morning person. He's still half asleep, bleary-eyed, basically a zombie with a bagel. He sits down across from me to eat his bagel and is just barely conscious. My back is to the outboard side of the ship, and the morning sun is blazing in one of the portholes, putting a big bright-ass circle of light right on his barely conscious face. He's squinting and chewing and basically just remembering how to be alive for today. It's painful to watch. But then Zombie Ops stops chewing, slowly picks up the phone, and dials the bridge. In his well-known "I'm still totally asleep" voice, he says, "Hee, it's Ops. Could you shift our bar pat? Yeah, 165. Thanks," and puts the phone down, and then he just sits there. Squinting. Waiting, and then, ever so slowly, I realize that that big blazing spot of sun has begun to slide off the zombie's face and onto the wall behind him. After a moment it clears his face and he blinks slowly a few times, and the brilliant beauty of what I've just witnessed begins to overwhelm me. By ordering the bridge to adjust the ship's back and forth patrol by about 15 degrees, he's changed our course just enough to reposition the sun off of his face. He's literally just redirected thousands of tons of steel and hundreds of people so that he could get the sun out of his eyes while he eats his bagel. I am in awe. He slowly picks up his bagel, and for a moment I'm terrified at the thought that his own genius may escape him, that he may never appreciate the epic brilliance of his laziness. But between his next bites he pauses, looks at me, and gives me the faintest, sly grin, before returning to gnaw slowly on his zombie bagel. Shot 10 Nerf darts at my light switch, from bed. Missed all of them and slept with the lights on. Washed bed sheets. Didn't put the sheets on till 2 months later. I didn't want to get up to get scissors to open a package I had, so I grabbed the cat and used his claws. It was soft plastic and the cat was indifferent. I tried to skip to the good part of a 33-second YouTube video.